peoples of the worldwide federated internet. What's good? Kind of wanted to do a video on this topic right here for quite some time now. And what I want to discuss is the Electoral College. And the reason I would like to discuss the Electoral College is because many people, I think, are in the same position that I was in. I did not like the idea of the Electoral College. I wanted a national popular vote. I was of the opinion that my vote didn't matter and this was all a sham. And the biggest reason for that is I literally did not understand the Electoral College. I think many people don't. I had a discussion with a friend of mine. It was probably about maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I think that was about the time we were overseas. We're having a discussion about this. I was very passionate about it, but I didn't really know much about it, which is really an oxymoron. If you're going to be passionate about something, you should at least know about it. So really ignorant on my part, which, as I get older, I take more pause if I don't really know something. I'm not saying you have to understand in depth and know the ins and outs, but you should know something. I didn't know anything. I was a fool. Anyway, my friend sat me down. We talked about the Electoral College. He explained it. I read some articles, watched some videos, read a little bit about how it came about, how, the mechanics of the Electoral College. And as I got the better understanding, I didn't necessarily jump on board right away with not wanting it to go away. But over the years, as I've understood this more, I've realized the genius in the Electoral College, which brings me to another problem in dealing with this. So the founding fathers were geniuses when it came to politics, very learned men. Now, you say something like that, people's heads pop, especially nowadays. Especially, you're a black man saying that the founding fathers were brilliant men. How dare you? Well, they were brilliant men. I didn't say they were perfect men. I think we mix and conflate brilliance and perfection sometimes. And to explain further what I mean by that is, there's a lot of people who will completely discredit and discount what someone says because they're on the opposite side of a belief system from that person. And someone being on the opposite side of you as far as beliefs doesn't mean that everything they say is just complete and utter foolishness. Probably very smart people. You just happen to disagree in one area or another. There's atheists that are brilliant. We don't agree about God, which is the most important issue to man. That doesn't mean that they are not brilliant in their own right in their respective subject. And I think those two things can be true at the same time. I can disagree with someone and I can believe they're wrong about something and brilliant at the same time. That is possible. I wish more people could understand that, but that's lost on a whole generation. But I kind of wanted to talk about the Electoral College because as I look at it, like I said, I think there's a concerted effort to get people to hate and despise the Electoral College without really understanding it. Do we have a national popular vote? In a way we do, but in a more balanced way. whereby we don't have mob rule. And I'll kind of go into that just a little bit as I read some things. I'm going to read the section of the Constitution dealing with the Electoral College is Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2, for those who would like to know. And I'm going to read this. So, Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution, Section 1, Clause 2. Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors equal to the number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress, but no senator or representative or person holding an office or of trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed an elector. So, that's dealing with the Electoral College. The Electoral College came out of the Great Compromise, and there was two competing ideas for how to choose a president. There was the Virginia plan and there was the New Jersey plan. The Virginia plan was a plan that favored heavily the more populated states, and the New Jersey plan was a plan that was more favorable to states that didn't have quite as large a population and as much representation as far as electing a president. So they got together during a great compromise, and one of the things that came out of that was the Electoral College. The Electoral College was established and agreed upon on September 6, 1787. I believe that our country has been helped greatly by the Electoral College. So I'm going to read off to you the number of electors by states, but before I do that, I wanted to use an example to explain to you why I like the Electoral College, and every vote does matter, but it's a more balanced way for every vote to count. Okay, so this is I'm going to use a small scenario, a cul-de-sac, to explain on a small scale the grander scale of the Electoral College. So let's say you have a cul-de-sac, right? And let's say you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 houses, right, in this cul-de-sac. And let's say that cul-de-sac is cut off by a gate. So let's say you have walls surrounding, and you have a homeowners association amongst those houses in that cul-de-sac, and everyone in the houses gets a vote on how things are run and what they do concerning the cul-de-sac, right? So now, with that in mind, let's say on the two ends, right? So we got 6 houses, and let's say the 2 houses on the end, one house has 10 people in it, and on the other end, that house has 5 people in it. And let's say the 4 houses in the middle, one house has 2 people, one house has 3 people, one house has 4 people, and one house has 1 person. So if every person in these houses get a vote concerning things in that neighborhood, the things in that neighborhood would only ever be governed by what happens concerning houses on the end, right? Let's say those 2 end houses get together and they say, hey, we're on the end, so what we care about is the beautification of these walls on these 2 ends because this is where our houses are. We're concerned about the upkeep of these 2 walls right here because this is where our houses are. They get together. They have 15 votes. They win every time. The matters and concerns of the other people there never gets considered because those 2 in-houses win every single time. Each person in those houses gets a vote, right? So this is a situation that's pretty problematic. They have 15 votes collectively, and the other 4 houses have 10 votes. They'll never win. The houses in the center will never matter. Here's what the Electoral College does. The people that are in the first house on the end, instead of 10 votes, those 10 people are represented by 3 votes. And on the other end, instead of those people getting 5 votes, those 5 people in that house are represented by 2 votes. So then the guy or lady that's in the house with just one person gets 1 vote. The person in the house with 4 people gets 2 votes. The person in a house with 3 people gets 2 votes. And the person in a house with 2 people gets 1 vote. What that would force is everyone in that cul-de-sac, every house would have a voice that mattered, and every house would have to be considered when voting for things concerning the whole cul-de-sac. It wouldn't just be the 2 end houses. And in my opinion, this is what the Electoral College does for the rest of the country. Now, what I'm going to do here is I want to go into briefly how many electors are in each state. So let's do that. So as of 2020, the state of Alabama has 9 electors, Alaska has 3, Arizona has 11, Arkansas has 6, California has 55, being the most heavily populated state. Colorado has 9. Connecticut has 7. DC has 3. Delaware has 3. Florida has 29. Florida is the 3rd most populated state, behind Texas, which is the 2nd. Georgia has 16. Hawaii has 4. Idaho has 4. Illinois has 20. Indiana has 11. Iowa has 6. Kansas has 6. Kentucky has 8. Louisiana has 8. Maine has 4. Maryland has 10. Massachusetts has 11. Michigan has 16. Minnesota has 10. Mississippi has 6. Missouri has 10. Montana 3. Nebraska 5. Nevada has 6. New Hampshire has 4. New Jersey has 14. Where am I at? New Mexico has 5. New York has 29. New York, if I'm not mistaken, is the 4th most populated state behind or in front of Florida. So it goes California, Texas, Florida, and New York, if I'm not mistaken. Let me get back to where I'm at. So New York had 29. North Carolina has 15. North Dakota has 3. Ohio has 18. Oklahoma has 7. Oregon has 7. Pennsylvania has 20. Rhode Island has 4. South Carolina has 9. South Dakota has 3. Tennessee has 11. Texas has 38. Utah has 6. Vermont has 3. Virginia has 13. Washington has 12. West Virginia has 5. Wisconsin has 10. And Wyoming has 3. Now, for those of you who are watching the video and not listening to the podcast, on my screen now, I have a map of the United States with the electoral college numbers written on each state. Now, with the analogy I gave of a cul-de-sac, you can see how I was applying that here. If we had a national popular vote, the most heavily populated states in the union is California, Texas, Florida, and New York. You would have those 4 states pretty much electing the president every time. No other state would get a say. No other state would get representation in picking the president. And therein would lie the problem of a pure national popular vote. Now, contrary to popular belief, your vote actually does matter. It absolutely matters. Because when the state elections are held, you are voting for who your electors are going to choose. And most states have what's called faithless elector laws. And what that means is those electors are bound to pick whoever the people within that state vote for on the popular vote. Those electors are bound to pick that candidate. Now, I have a list. There's 32 states. I have a list of them, the ones that have faithless elector laws. Those states are Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, District of Columbia, Florida, Hawaii, Indiana, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Mississippi, Michigan, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, New Mexico, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Ohio, Oregon, South Carolina, Tennessee, Vermont, Virginia, Washington, Wisconsin, Wyoming. If your selective state is not on that list, I would get a petition together, get something put on the next ballot after this general election in another 2 years, and have some faithless elector laws put on the books. Now, generally speaking, the electors, they vote for whoever wins the popular vote within that respective state. I don't think that's really been a problem. There's been few instances in the states with faithless elector laws where an elector tried to go rogue, and what they'll do is they'll just pretty much fire that elector, pick another one, and that elector will vote for who the people chose in a popular vote within that state. So why did I say all that? Your vote does matter. Your vote absolutely does matter. Your vote matters in your state, and each state has power and representation in electing the president. This is why this is done this way. If we had a pure national popular vote, then all any president would ever have to do is focus on and concentrate on what the coast and cities want. Well, that's not fair to the people who live in the center of the country. That's not fair to the people in the Midwest. That's not fair to the people in the Northwest and the Northeast. All any presidential candidate would have to focus on, again, as I said before, is California, Texas, Florida, New York. They wouldn't have to focus on any other state. They could win an election purely on those states alone. That is unfair. Completely unfair to the rest of the country. And so in the 2016 election, this is where Hillary Clinton lost. She wasn't paying attention. You see, if you follow where Hillary Clinton was doing her most heavy campaigning, she was campaigning a lot on these California. I don't know if she did much in Texas. I think she did do some in Texas, Florida, and New York heavily. This was the places that she focused on, right? That didn't help her, because what happened is Donald Trump decided. Now he did do some campaigning in like in Florida, which is considered a swing state, and that's another thing. S- Swing states are not a concrete and a solidified thing that will never change. Swing states can change. For many years, California voted Republican. It switched. It was up for play, and now California, on a generally speaking, votes Democrat, right? And there's other states that used to be one way and now go either way. You just don't know. They become, that's why they call them swing states. You don't know which direction the state is going to go in, but that changes, right? So that's not a concrete thing. It's not a state is not guaranteed to stay a swing state. This system, the Electoral College, in my opinion, it makes the election of the President of the United States a more balanced election where the president has to focus on the whole country and not just the coast and not just certain states. That's a good thing in my opinion. Each state, for to some degree, gets a power play, right? If a president won, um let's say a president won California and Texas, the majority of the votes, let's say even 85 to 95% of the votes, that's a lot of votes. I think California has something like, what, 38 million people or something like that, 40 million people, something crazy. It's nuts, right? And I can't remember the exact number of Texas. I think it might be like 28 million or maybe even 30 million. I can't remember, but a president could focus very heavily on just those two states alone, kind of focus on a little bit of other states just to get some more votes and not really worry about the rest of the country. He could just focus on issues in those places, win the presidency, and say, screw the rest of the country. I'm just going to take care of these people here. That would be unfair. So what a president has to do is a president has to focus on the entire country. Now, again, there's some states that typically vote a certain way, and presidents, still should try to win those states. But the election is not chosen by just one state, or just two states, or just three states. And we don't want it to be that way because we have a big country. We can't just focus on problems that California has. Idaho is going to have different issues than California. When you look at state elections, like let's take governor, I think the Electoral College model should actually be mimicked and actually used within states, because I think you would have better representation when it comes to picking a governor and when it comes to passing certain laws. I'll give you an example. A lot of the laws, like let's take gun laws in New York City, right? So a large number of people live in New York City, 8 million people. So let's say if on a state ballot you have a gun control measure that would heavily restrict even um, rifles used for hunting. Well, New York is not just made up of New York City, but what would happen is these heavy-handed laws would be passed, making it more complicated for somebody in a different part of the state, to which the problems faced in New York City doesn't face this person, so they should not be bound to the same things that that person in that urban center is bound to. And so I think things like that would happen on a grander scale. If we did not have the Electoral College, you would get presidential candidates that only care about the coast, and they would win. All they would have to do is run on issues that people on the coast are concerned with, or Run on issues that people in the biggest cities in the country are concerned with. That's all you have to run on. Forget about farm country. Forget about what most people call flippantly flyover country. I don't call it that because the whole country matters from sea to shining sea. And the Electoral College, in my opinion, actually protects the integrity of our elections. I know I say that and heads are popping all over the place and people disagree. I understand that. It's a contentious topic. Not everybody agrees with my stance on the Electoral College, but I personally believe the Electoral College is not only a genius system, I think it's a very self protecting system. It actually keeps everything held together, and it forces compromise, and it forces presidential candidates to understand that this is a whole country. The country is not just made of Dallas, New York, Los Angeles, San Diego, Houston, Miami, Orlando. The country is not just made up of those cities. This is a whole country. North, south, east, and west. Northeast, southeast, west, east. All of this matters. Presidential candidates should be focused on the whole country and not just one part of it or one section. And so, this is my opinion. I think the Electoral College matters. I think it was a very ingenious system. Whether the founding fathers, did this intentionally or whether it was just by accident that they created this ingenious system, probably wasn't by accident. As I said, these were some really brilliant dudes when it comes to government. These were no slouches. So I think, this wasn't an in-depth look into the Electoral College. There's things like how electors are chosen. Every state does it, uniquely and differently. States don't necessarily do it the exact same way. So that would be something I would look into for your respective state. But this was a 30,000-foot view of the Electoral College. I didn't really go into details. I think it's worth going into detail. I think it's definitely worth something looking into. And I think it's something that we should all understand. And you might still disagree and you might not like the Electoral College even after this video, even after you do your own research, but at least you will know enough to have a more informed opinion whether you like it or not. And I believe that's a good thing. Y'all know what it is. Stay frosty, people.